Hey everyone. So today I'm going to talk about red meat and whether it causes cancer, and I'm going to go over the research, evolution, etc. So this is something I'm quite passionate about because I'm really passionate about the environment, and there are a lot of claims nowadays that cows cause global warming, they cause cancer, they cause diabetes, all sorts of claims. So let's look into what the science says and let's use a little bit of logic here as well. So before I start, I just want to say that most of the nutritional science that is published is untrue and of poor quality. So we really need to use our logic and brains when it comes to nutrition. And this is the same for all clinical studies. This is what some of the best journals' former editors have said. Much of the scientific literature may be untrue, perhaps half. And medical research is of extremely poor quality. And we cannot trust physicians or medical guidelines anymore. These are what former editors of the most prestigious journals are saying. And that's something that I've realized as well because I read a lot of research papers that a lot of the research is really poor quality and insufficient to draw conclusions from. So let's talk about meat. An evolutionary perspective, we'll talk about the nutrients, we'll talk about the scientific research, compare it to chicken, and about the environment as well. So, the first question I want to ask is ruminant animals like deer, bison, buffalo, these are the most abundant creatures on the planet. Now, why has nature created so many of these animals? Is it to cause global warming? I don't think so. Um, if these animals are, not hunted, not eaten by carnivores, they can overgraze and destroy the balance of the environment. And we humans have been hunter gatherers for most of our existence. So that is the kind of diet that we have evolved to eat. And I'm going to go into the nutritional aspects of meat in just a second. So, animal foods have essential nutrients in them that are absent in plant based foods. And animal foods do not have any anti nutrients in them. So, what are some of these nutrients that are present exclusively in animal based foods? Omega 3 fats, essential. Iron, selenium, zinc, and iodine. Bioavailable vitamin A, D, K, and all of these other nutrients that are absent in plant based foods. Now, let's look a little bit into bioavailability. So, what bioavailability means is how much of the nutrients in a certain food are getting absorbed. Okay, and if there are anti nutrients in a certain food, then the amount of nutrients that gets absorbed reduces. And this graph is an excellent example. Okay, so oysters. Oysters are an animal based food that is really rich in zinc. So when we eat oysters by themselves, our blood zinc level goes up a lot. But if you look at the two graphs below, when you combine them with black beans, the zinc level has reduced significantly. And when you combine them with corn tortillas, the zinc level doesn't even change. What does this mean? This means that plant based foods like grains and legumes have anti nutrients in them that prevent you from absorbing all the nutrients that you need. Now, that doesn't mean that these grains and legumes are necessarily bad for us. It just means that we have to prepare them really well in traditional ways in order to get the maximum nutrients and minimize the anti nutrients within them. So let's compare 100 grams of beef versus 100 grams of lentils. Okay. So 100 grams of beef has around 27 grams of protein, while lentils have around 8 grams of protein. And beef has a much more vitamins, minerals, and healthy fats. It tastes better and it's easier to digest. Um, this is just a list of all the nutrients that are superior in beef as compared to lentils. Okay, so beef has protein and fat and no carbohydrates, whereas beans and lentils is primarily carbohydrates with a little bit of protein, right? So 100 grams of lentils has about 21 grams of carbs and 8 grams of protein. In addition to that, it's an incomplete source of protein. Not all of this protein is absorbed by the body, and it has a very poor protein quality score compared to beef. And to get the same amount of protein per day, you need 1 kilo of cooked lentils. We cannot eat that much lentils. We would not be able to leave the toilet. So, beans are high in anti-nutrients. They're a source of carbohydrates with a little bit of protein, and they're poor quality proteins. They do not have any healthy fats like monounsaturated, saturated, and omega 3 fats. They do not have as much vitamins and minerals. They are harder to digest and they have anti nutrients in them. So, overall, beef wins in this scenario. But that doesn't mean that beans are unhealthy, it just means beef is better for you. Same with spinach. So they say spinach is a really good source of iron, but the truth is only a little bit of that iron is absorbed, and there's anti-nutrients called oxalates that are present in spinach, which can reduce the iron absorption. Okay. Meat, on the other hand, red meat has much higher iron absorption rate and it has heme iron, which is a bioavailable source of iron. Let's look at vitamin A. They say that carrots and mangoes are good source of vitamin A, which is true, but that vitamin A is beta carotene. It's a plant vitamin A. We are animals and we need retinol, which is a bioavailable vitamin A, which is only found in animal-based foods like dairy and meat. Same thing with vitamin B12 and omega 3. These are essential nutrients that are exclusively found in animal-based foods. Flax seeds and chia seeds are not a source of omega 3 fats that our body needs. They have a type of omega 3 called ALA, which is not converted into the bioavailable EPA and DHA that we need as humans. Logic, if you eat too many lentils, you get bloated and it causes digestive discomfort. So that's probably a sign that it's not something we should be eating too much of. And if you're able to tolerate it and you're able to prepare it well, soak it, ferment it, sprout it, pressure cook it, that's great. And that's how I would recommend eating grains. And that's how my ancestors, my Indian ancestors, have always eaten them. Final words on nutrition. Animal-based foods trump plant-based food with respect to all nutrients. And if you are vegan, you would need to supplement B12, zinc, vitamin D3, K2, and omega 3 from algal oil. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the research on red meat. Okay. So Bill Gates wants us to switch to plant-based meats that he can invest into so that he can invest into these factories that produce vegan alternative meats and make money out of it. But is there any scientific evidence for his claims? He claims that it's better for our cholesterol. So I've spoken about cholesterol quite a bit. Those with higher cholesterol live longer and have lower rates of cancer, death, etc. And those who have a heart attack generally have lower LDL cholesterol and lower HDL cholesterol compared to the general population. But if you want to know about cholesterol, I've made 100 other videos on it. But let's talk about cancer and red meat consumption. So, since the 1990s, our red meat consumption in the US has gone down significantly because of the government guidelines. But the cancer incidence has gone up exponentially. So, this doesn't make much sense. If red meat does cause cancer, then we should be seeing a reduction in the cancer rates. But what we're seeing is a huge exponential rise. And as you can see, people are eating a lot of white meat, they're eating a lot of chicken, they're listening to the government. So there's 800 plus studies that have been done on red meat. Okay. Most of them are epidemiological studies. So these are based on food frequency questionnaires. And they're really poor quality studies. You can't really make any conclusions about causative issues when you do these studies. So they'll ask people, what did you eat last year? And they'll have to fill out some random questions, and most of them lie. So it's really just not good quality research to begin with. But even then, only 14 out of 800 plus studies have shown some association. 14 out of 800. But they have chosen these 14, and let's see what these 14 out of 800 studies showed. Those who ate red meat generally were less healthier because they smoked more cigarettes, they drank more alcohol, they ate out more, they exercised less. So, all of these factors would have played in. So, if you are eating McDonald's burger with Coke and fries, is it the beef that is causing the cancer, or is it going to be all of the other ingredients present in the burger? Now let's look at rat studies. These are some of the studies they claim is good evidence that red meat may cause cancer. So, firstly, I don't think that studies on genetically modified rats are can always be extrapolated to humans. They may be of some value, but I don't think that they're very good quality to be like, oh, red meat causes cancer. But let's see what the rat study showed. They injected rats with a cancer causing chemical. Yep, that's what they did. And then step two, they gave some red meat to the rat. And then step three, they saw if there is cancer in the rats. So, yes, if you have been injected with a carcinogenic chemical, you can get cancer. That's not really that surprising. But to blame the red meat for it, I don't know. What about human studies? This is another human study that they did where they had a vegetarian group, a non vegetarian with lots of fiber, and a non vegetarian with low fiber group. So they noticed that the meat based low fiber group was losing a lot of weight. So what they did is they made these people eat white bread and jam in order to maintain their weight. And that group did have a higher risk of cancer. So, how do we know whether it was the red meat or the white bread and jam that was causing the cancer? So the question is there any good research on red meat and cancer in humans? There's not even one clinical study, not even one. Okay, no study has examined whether the difference between red meat versus white meat. No clinical trials have shown that there's cancer formation in humans with red meat consumption. And I would also like to add that cancer is not something that exists in modern hunter gatherer populations who predominantly eat red meat. Cancer is something that you see in modern civilized humans that eat a lot of processed food. What I want is a good study which compares the same amount of calories, same amount of macronutrients in a white meat and red meat, and then see if there's any difference. Okay? And the WHO themselves say that eating red meat has not been established as a cause of cancer. This is from the WHO website. So, why are they contradicting themselves? Why are they so against red meat? Now, can red meat prevent or cure cancer? That's a question that I have to ask, and I think the answer is yes. Because if you eat red meat, which is rich in fat and protein, you are less likely to overeat. It's low in calories. You're less likely to be obese. And most of all, you're less likely to have insulin resistance, obesity, and diabetes. These are the main causes of cancers. Okay? People who have diabetes are much more likely to develop all sorts of common cancers that we see today. Now let's talk about red meat and chicken and pork and the quality of the meat and why that matters. And I'm going to take you to Spain, which is apparently one of the healthiest countries in the world. Their diet is predominantly meat. It's a lot of pork, a lot of ham, fish, full fat dairy. If you go to Europe and you tell a European to eat low fat dairy, they will probably laugh at you because low fat dairy is really processed and it's really unhealthy. And no one in Europe eats low fat dairy. They all eat full fat dairy and they're much healthier for it as well. And people in Spain generally have a good lifestyle. They're more relaxed and less stress as well. And the pig that you eat in Spain is Iberican pig. These are healthy animals that live out in the open and they eat grass, they eat foraged food. Whereas the industrialized raised pigs are fed a lot of grains that makes them sick. And this is the same thing that happens to industrialized farmed chickens. You feed grains to an animal, what happens? They become fat quickly, they develop diabetes and things like that. And then they get infections, and then they're fed a lot of antibiotics and hormones. And what happens when you keep feeding these grains to these animals? They fatten up, they get sick, and the amount of fat that's present in their meat is going to be bad omega 6 instead of low omega 3. Whereas if you look at farmed cows or ruminant animals, there are so many ruminant animals on the planet. There's enough grass to feed all the ruminants in the planet. Grass-fed cows are generally healthier. They're not fed a lot of grains. They don't get sick as often, and as long as they're not fed these hormones, antibiotics, and other things, they're generally quite healthy and rich in omega 3 fats and less omega 6 fats. Now, I really want you to ask yourself the question, the first picture versus the second picture. Which one is better for the environment? The first picture is industrialized monoculture grain farming. What you're seeing there is death of the soil. They are destroying all of the biodiversity that is present in that area. They're killing rodents, they're killing insects, they're killing worms, they're killing the spiders, the deer, the birds, all of the fungi, all of the bacteria. They're killing an entire ecosystem with pesticides, fertilizers, etc. They're killing biodiversity. And that's how these grains are produced. Whereas if you look at the next picture, these are cows that are in their natural environment and they are eating grass. There's lots of different varieties of grass there, and nothing is getting destroyed. There is no chemicals involved in this process. So, really, the question we should be asking is, why is the government asking us to eat more and more and more monoculture farmed grains and less meat? Why are they blaming cows for global warming? And the next question I want to ask is, okay, suppose cows do cause global warming because they fart methane. What about all the other ruminant animals present in the world? There are so many of them. There's sheep, there's giraffes, there's goat, there's elks, there's bison. Why is it only that cows cause global warming and all of these animals, which have the same kind of structure, same four stomachs, same grass eating capacity, and all of them release methane into the atmosphere? So, why are we only blaming cows but not blaming the rest of the animals? Right? And I have an answer for that. The methane that is released by the cows and the ruminant animals is part of nature's carbon cycle. What does that mean? So, the methane that is released by farting and burping gets converted into water and carbon dioxide, right? And the carbon dioxide is then taken up by the grass, and photosynthesis happens, and then the cow eats the grass, and the cycle continues on and on and on. And as the grass grows further, more and more carbon gets sequestered into the soil. This is called the biogenic carbon cycle. And this is very different from what we humans do, which is we extract oil from the earth, we burn it, and then we don't do anything about it. So it is really humans and burning of fossil fuels that is driving global warming. But we really want to blame other animals for it. And here's more evidence of that same thing. Look at that picture, which shows you what nature is like versus what agriculture is like. In the first half of the picture, you can see how abundant the topsoil looks. It's full of grass, it's full of roots that have been that are nourishing the topsoil, and there will be really good biodiversity there as well. Whereas if you look at the soil underneath the agriculture crops, the soil looks dead. So what we're doing really is we're killing the planet. We're destroying the planet with modern industrialized agriculture. We're degrading the topsoil, and experts say that We have only about 60 years of farming left if we continue this way. It is unsustainable and it is destroying the environment. Not only that, when humans are eating predominantly grains instead of meat, what happens to us? We don't get as much nutrients. We're consuming a lot of carbohydrates, so we have higher risk of diabetes and all of the problems caused by diabetes, including heart attacks, stroke, obesity, etc., etc. And what does that mean? We're going to get more sick, we're going to have more chronic illnesses, and we're going to need more pharmaceutical drugs. And pharmaceutical drugs are horrible for the environment in so many ways. Okay, so one is pharmaceutical drugs are produced in large factories that release a lot of fossil fuels into the earth. They release a lot of chemical wastes. They use a lot of single use plastics, which destroy the planet. And these drugs are, um, they cause a lot of side effects in humans because they are disrupting our physiology, but they also do the same in animals. When we release these pharmaceutical drugs into the water, our fish and our algae and all of the animals that live in the ocean are getting exposed to these drugs, and then they're going to get the sicknesses that we get from taking these drugs. So, really, we're just destroying ourselves, we're destroying the soil, we're destroying all of the animals and plants. And the only people who are benefiting from this is the industry, the farming industry, the food industry, and the pharmaceutical industry. Um, and medical science has made so much progress that there's hardly a healthy man left. That is the state of Western medicine. And this is another diagram of how regenerative farming and pasture raised ruminant grazing can actually help regenerate the soil. And I think this is the only, um, you know, way in which we can do something to combat global warming. So, yeah, going back to plant based meat, why do billionaires want us to eat plant based meat? Look at the ingredients in plant based meat. There's 100,000 ingredients in there. You cannot possibly make a plant based meat at home. Okay? It's impossible. It's got so many chemicals, it's got seed oils, it's got all of these starches and gums, and I don't even know how the ingredients are made. And to make these kind of plant based meats, you need a factory. And factories are not good for the environment. Okay? Now, I'd like to finish off by asking this question: can red meat cure cancer? Well, I have some evidence to suggest that it may. This is a case published of remission of colon cancer with a Paleolithic ketogenic diet. So, a Paleolithic ketogenic diet is a diet that is rich in red meat and animal fat, and puts you into ketosis. And this is how our ancestors have lived for many years. Okay. Here is a case report of remission of rectal cancer with keto. And here are some more studies. Here are six, seven published case reports of cancer remission with this diet. Okay. And this is a follow up study as well. They followed up these people for many months and even years, where the cancer has gone into complete remission. They've reversed the cancer with this meat and fat based diet. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.